right? The definition that we know today is a priest, right? Oh, you're going to get married, you're going to go to chapel, you're going to go to mass or whichever. And so what they did was, oh, those are matchmakers, and when they really look into the detail of what it meant to be a matchmaker, you weren't just walking around saying, oh, he will look good with her, let's hook him up, or, it wasn't like that. It was, you had to study the history of the family, you had to study a lot of the socioeconomic background of the family, as far as our relatives and what would be better for the community and all that. So, one of the interpretations that we're questioning is she was actually a priestess, and that is found throughout all of Anahuac, actually, even though we're just emphasizing on the Mexica for the point of this presentation. So that's one. Now, one of the other roles that we have of Mexica women, and I really like this one, is Mexica scribes. Now, a lot of us know, actually we had libraries, we had books. I'm sure you're all aware our books were codices, and we got in the Mexica movement have a very nice collection of the codice replicas, and hopefully in future events we'll be able to bring them out and display them. But pretty much in the information that I'm bringing up, in this book, Women in Ancient America, by Karen Olsen Bruns and Karen E. Stothert, pretty much what they're doing is going back and revisiting archaeological sites, revisiting certain characters in the findings, whether it be in books, whether it be actual statues. And one of the things that they're coming across is that there were indeed female scribes. And then we have here, this is an actual taken from the Florentine Codex. So this gives you the other level of the Mexica society, where in order for you to write, that must mean that you knew how to read. That must mean that you were educated, which gets us to the point that in the Mexica civilization, we had what is called mandatory education. Today we think it's part of, U.S. culture, mandatory education, how lovely. It's a good thing, but we really have to go back and say, well, that sounds very familiar once you start learning your history, that we did have mandatory education, and it wasn't just limited to the nobles. This was something that was throughout all of Tenochtitlan. And again, some of the information is still coming up regarding, was this a practice that we all had throughout Anahuac, or is it just specifically Mexica? And at this point, we have enough information to also focus on the Mexica culture, and therefore we have a Mexica female scribe. Now, I think I have two more. Yes, so that's the female scribe. Now, one of the other ones that we're going to come across is probably one of the most important roles that we had in medicine were of doctors. The Spaniards, when they came across the women that were taking care of prenatal care of pregnant women, of little children, they were calling them midwives. A midwife is a very, how can I put it? It's a very belittling term to call a doctor. I mean, you don't go to Kaiser and say, oh, pass me the midwife, I'm about to have my child. That's a doctor. That takes years of study, that takes years of that takes years of observation. So what we have here, we have a huge practice and actual value system of doctors. And this particular case is of obstetrician, which is helping women in childbirth. But not only are you aware of female anatomy and female reproductive system, you're aware of what medicines to give her to help her in her childbirth. You're aware of what food she should eat, what food she shouldn't eat throughout her pregnancy, as well as the child, what food the child should eat, not eat, all that good stuff. So when you look at all this here, it's not just the physical act of childbirth that the woman happened to be there to do. This was an actual assigned doctor that you had in the Mexica society. So that's another thing that we have to kind of, reinterpret from the European writings. And I mean, it's exciting to me, at least, to start realizing all these things, because we're giving these negative notions of Native women. We're giving always like this, and I'll get to that in a bit, Pocahontas, or all they did was run around in the woods and, all that good stuff. And a lot of this information always, seems to be lacking in the interpretation, whether it be in schools like these, in elementaries, in cartoons, the whole works. Now, the last one I'm going to cover, I think it's one of my favorites, is as far as art goes in the Mexica culture, we have poets, we have songwriters, we have and poetry was a huge aspect of Mexica culture for those of you who have read a little bit more about it. And it's probably the most beautiful part of every culture, I think. But it's really nice to know that women in Mexica culture also participated in some of that establishment and some of the songs that were written. There was a lot of songs for a lot of things, for weddings, for celebrations, for war societies. There's a lot of songwriting, poetry, and this one, there's a lot of writers, not just in the Mexica culture, but in the book that I mentioned earlier, they're in the Mayan towns, in Native American, this part of Anahuac. So this is a huge part, a very huge contribution that women have also made to Anahuac culture. So we're looking at positive, and these are all pretty positive views of our women, of who we were and what we contributed to our society. And, it's very interesting and as well as very helpful for us in trying to reclaim our culture and our heritage is to try to keep those filters on, because we're not only reinterpreting, what they viewed us as far as our theology, our culture, but we need to filter, how they portray and how they describe our societies regarding to gender. Now, what we have today, what is the view of an indigenous woman today? What's the view of a Nicantlaca woman? Of course, we all know Pocahontas, right? We all know Shell from Roto El Dorado. And I made this one, I think I've been doing this since high school, but just showing, right, the negative impacts of the media against our own self-image as Nicantlaca women, obviously our men as well. And what I have up here are two little girls looking at our book, right? And obviously they're Nicantlaca, and a lot of us can relate, those of us young little girls looking up to Barbie, looking up to all these European standards of beauty, right, that are portrayed. And these images here, there's tons. Obviously, you could just go to any liquor store, pick up a magazine, they're all filled. But these particular ones, like for example, the Pocahontas one, I thought it was very interesting how they choose to have a still of Pocahontas over, John Smith. I thought that was very interesting. Again, the exoticized version of a Nicantlaca woman. Anything that had to do with Europeans is always in a sexualized manner. And over here to your right, we have Shell. And how many of you remember Shell from Roto El Dorado? Some of you, yeah. So again, we have a very distorted view of what a female looked like at the point of the European invasion. But throughout this cartoon, it's constant sexual, assertions that she makes to the Europeans. And you got to think back to the little girls who are watching this, and they're saying, you know what? Maybe there is nothing good to be proud of. If I look like her, maybe I should get with the white guy. What are you? The message that is being given to these little girls is, you know what? Your culture is not a good one. It's repressing you. And if you notice in both of these two rows, it's your native culture that's oppressive to who you are. So the only way that you can better who you are as a female is to fall in love with the white man, right? And we have that here, and we have that again given out into the Roto El Dorado. And we see that constantly every day in novelas. We see that in mariachi songs. We see that in commercials. So this imposition of racism, of white supremacy, we're getting that message every day as men, as women, and our children are learning them very well. And it's really hard to try to combat that. For those of you who have, little girls or little boys, and how do you fight, these constant portrayals of who we are as a people and these dictations of what is beautiful, of what is true love. And now we get to the next images, right?